Welcome everybody. My name is Neil Dugan, and I'm standing in for Mariana Kangiza, who unfortunately is struggling with the connection to the internet today from Greece. They've had very large storms there, and so I'm online here from Perth in Western Australia, and it's a great privilege today to have Dr. Meeta Nihlani with us and Zachuas Ogonji. And Dr. Nihlani is based in India, and Zachuas is based in Kenya. And so I'm in Australia. So we're all around the world today, and welcome, to you all. And the topic today that we're going to talk about is the challenges around actually forming a cooperative and collaborative venture. It's a real joint venture between the offices that are in Kenya and also Uganda. And we may well be getting Martha on as well, who is based in Uganda. And we can hear about the challenges that are actually right in place. And obviously behind the scenes, between all of the players, the four main players that are involved in this project, all the details are being managed. But today what I'd like to talk about is how we go about establishing a project, a homeopathic project based in somewhere where homeopathy is not particularly known, and all of the technical issues that are actually involved in all of that. So I wonder if either of you, if you'd like to start, but I'd really appreciate just a very brief introduction to yourselves, and then we'll go from there. So, perhaps Zachuas, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yes, thank you, Neil, for starting us off in this session. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm very grateful to be hosted and to be speaking during this session. I look forward, of course, to a very rich interaction between us, and to share a few ideas of what the future of homeopathy is like in a place like Kenya and in Africa, and especially from the background of I working in the communities that I working with children who are disabled and who have experienced different challenges. So, like you have said, I'm Zachuas Ogonji. I work with organizations that deal with children, especially from very poor backgrounds. I coordinate activities in Kenya and in Liberia and in Uganda. So I'm very privileged to work with these families and needy children and see them really struggling with the basics of access to education, basics of access to good health, and lack of alternative thereof. So I really look forward to have an interesting conversation.
Thank you. And Dr. Nihlani, I wonder if you could just quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Dr. Neil, here. I'm Dr. Meeta Nihlani, and I'm from India. I'm a homeopath, and I'm practicing since 29 years. So I'm blessed to have many mentors in my life, and I have been learning homeopathy till date. And recently I've done a post-graduation course with the Other Song Academy, and that is FHPC, Fellowship in Counseling and Psychiatry with homeopathy. So recently what I have seen, many cases of autism are responding dramatically to my treatment. Like it's been last 4 to 5 years, autism is a lesser known area of, psychiatry or child behavioral problems. But when I've started working with homeopathy, I feel I'm the chosen one. I'm able to see differences in few weeks. So that is what I want to share. And it's my privilege to be here. Thank you for having me here.
Okay. So look, that's a great introduction. And Zachuas, you obviously have many children of the, coming from these sort of traumatic, type of circumstances who have psychiatric issues or psychological issues at the very least. And a little bit about myself. I'm not a homeopath, but I'm very sympathetic to homeopathy. And I am a clinical therapist myself, and I do a lot of work with, these kinds of psychiatric conditions as well, particularly in the chronic, variations of them. So rather than necessarily being clinical. There's no question that homeopathy is, providing a tremendous opportunity, to actually assist children with autism and, anybody in that whole spectrum. But one of the things that I'd like, you both to talk about a little bit is, like going, based on my own experience, which is that autism is fundamentally a strategy to manage overwhelm. And our, with the traumatic experiences that you were talking about, Zachuas, so in other words, the actual trauma that the children are experiencing, this is a tremendously overwhelming, thing in their lives. But there's many other, traumas which lead to pressurizing the system, and, the outcome, or one of the outcomes will be the autistic spectrum. And we had the great privilege of actually talking to some homeopaths in North America and also Japan recently. And the evidence that they were providing was that this autistic spectrum is tightly linked to, the issues around damage from vaccinations, so like vaccination damage, but many other areas of stress as well. So I wonder if we could just start by actually talking about, the ways in which stress-related disease, and particularly psychiatric disease, can actually be managed. So Dr. Nihlani, I wonder if you could just speak about that. Hello, we've got somebody new here.
Yeah, Martha is there.
It's Martha. Hello, Martha. It's Neil Dugan here from Australia, and Dr. Nihlani and Zachuas is here with us. We were just starting. We're just actually introducing ourselves. So we'll take this opportunity, if you wouldn't mind, please, to introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about, what's happening where you are at the moment. It would appear as though we've still got some issues there with the audio. Martha, if you're able to, we'll come back to you in a moment. If we could go back to the question, Dr. Nihlani, about the approach into managing these severe trauma experienced people, children in particular, pediatric. Yeah.
Right. So in homeopathy, when we work with children, homeopathy normally it's a science which is based on the holistic perspective. So when we witness a case, we see all the aspects of the children, like their behavior and the physical pathology, both are connected. So in psychiatric cases, we see the behavioral pattern and we see from where it is coming from. So in homeopathy, what we have is an important thing is individualization. Like if a person is suffering from ADHD, like there are common set of symptoms which all ADHD children they suffer from, like the hyperactivity, the restlessness, the irritation, the irritability, right? So that we see as a common set of symptoms. Like, and what is peculiarity about that restlessness? What is the peculiarity in that person? What is he reacting to? His individual traits are very important. So very close observation is needed in such cases. So in psychiatric cases also, like, what the child does when he's upset. Like, is he biting his teeth, or is he biting somebody, or is he into himself? Has he made a shell, or does he overeat during this time? So there are many aspects we go into. We try to study that child holistically from all the aspects, and even what are the diseases he has suffered since childhood. Sometimes even the suppression of boils or any skin disease also leads to such problems. That is what we have found. So there is a fine correlation between all these aspects. And also when we work with children, we very intensively see the mother's history during pregnancy, that is MHDP. So we study the state of the state of the parents during conception also. So it has to be a very deep understanding of that child.
Okay, I can understand, Dr. Nihlani, that it's extremely challenging to gather this kind of information,
Right.
you know, from these children. And, you know, clearly with the cooperation project that you're running at the moment between Uganda and Kenya and India and Greece, you know, if they can get on the phone call, that, you know, it's about how do we actually assist in this case taking. So it's more than case taking though, isn't it? It's like this very detailed observation of the experience of the individual, what their behavior is, and so on. So Martha, are you able to, have you got some audio yet, or are you still going? No, there's no audio there.
Martha, you can unmute so we can hear you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Martha.
Hello, how are you?
Thank you. Good. Look, thank you so much for being on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, Martha, if you could just very, very briefly introduce yourself and where you're working, and then we'll get to this question of how we can cooperate better to make sure that the children are being looked after.
All right, thank you for the invite. And my name is Martha Wanjau. I run a project for persons with disabilities. My niche is in mental disability. And I can say I have diverse experiences with the diverse types of disabilities for the various children. And I am honored to be here so that I may be able to learn more about my services and the way I can serve better.
Okay. So the topic that we're really coming to, that Dr. Nihlani is coming to, is how this cooperation can lead to the best information so that the prescription can be managed. You know, it's the diagnostic process that can lead to the prescription. And Dr. Nihlani, what is your proposal around how to assist, say, for example, Martha and her team, and Zachuas and his team rather? What type of proposal would you be presenting?
See, first and foremost is we can have a homeopath who's locally available, if it is possible. Right? So then we can coordinate and I can guide him how to observe the patient, how to give me that information, because the most important thing is that information about the child. The child who is experiencing, I want a very deep, as you rightly said, that it's not only case taking, it is going to the deeper experiences, the deeper experiences of the child. So it's a very intense connection with the child. And if we don't get a homeopath, then I have to talk to Martha and Moses. I have sent them a series of my cases and how I prescribe. So what is the deepest information which is needed? And Martha and Moses, they were able to give me that kind of intense information, because I felt they are very connected to the children they are working. So we all three can form a group, because they are staying with the children day in and day out, plus a local homeopath and me. So all three of us can work with a case.
Okay. Oh, very interesting. So
maybe I would share.
Yeah.
Please.
Hello. Okay, maybe I would share and say we are, personally, I can say that what I've been doing, I have just been talking to the relatives, the kinsmen of these children, so that they allow me to use these children as the as samples. Maybe we can learn through the real experiences that I go through here with the children. But I just wanted to be given permission by the relatives so that I'm on the safe side. Actually, as I'm seated here, I'm struggling with one of the children here. He has refused to be away, and he has insisted that he's just disturbing me. And it's not easy, but for this one, I've already been granted permission, but he's actually struggling with me, and he has really refused to get out of the office. And I can say with that kind of permission, I'll be able to be free to share the experiences. I can be able to take the short videos, and I know that I am safe, that they will not come back maybe many years later to hit back on me because of using their children.
Can I maybe add a comment to that as part of the bigger challenge that we are facing? Locally, there is the sort of homeopathy is not a thing here. In Kenya, for example, as we were doing some research a few weeks ago, we found there's only one association that is registered that carries out homeopathy, and it is linked to an organization in Australia where you are. But it is sort of only consumed by a certain class of people. So it's what we are seeing as a trend is mostly for the high class and people who have options, people who can decide on what they want for themselves. But among the poor and among the middle income earners and the poor, homeopathy is not an exercise that is embraced. That is one of the challenges we have seen, and that's what Meeta is alluding to. We do have a challenge of there's a very stiff regulations around complementary medicine. We've been doing a little bit of research to just find out if you are to set up a homeopathy clinic, for example, or if you are to set up a practice, what will be needed, or if you are to have some prescriptions, what will be needed. And we found it is a very long, lengthy, and tedious process with a lot of hurdles for one to skip. By the fact that homeopathy is still is being regulated by the mainstream kind of doctors, is a challenge in itself, because then there is a conflict of interest right there. So there are still a lot of hurdles that we have seen. Personally, I can't say I'm a homeopathy, but I'm always interested in solutions that can help the group of children that I work with. And having visited Mother being one of the children homes that we support, a mother's home, and then working with Moses in Uganda, definitely when I read about homeopathy and we got introduced to Meeta, I felt it could be an alternative. You know, Mother currently is spending a lot of money in hospitals, same to Moses, to just take care of the kids. So if we find an alternative that can really help them, that would be very good. And I see homeopathy as one of the alternatives that can be there. But then we really have to go down a path of awareness, especially among the low income earners and the poor. We really have to rally that we go through the government hurdles and other regulatory hurdles before we can safely say we can use homeopathy as a solution fully. So we see there's still a challenge there. And then maybe secondly and lastly is the issue of stigma. Stigma, especially from families. We find like some of the kids that Martha work with, some of the kids that Moses work with, their families have dumped them. You know, they leave them by the roadside, they drop them, you know, they have them in their homes, but they are not introduced to visitors, they are not shown to anyone. Nobody wants to know that the family has a disabled child who is probably autistic or is experiencing other mental problems. So they hide them away. And that becomes either it is too difficult to find them and help them, or they are dumped by the roadside and you don't know who dumped them. So you end up in a situation where if you pick them, you don't know how to exactly help them in a better way. So those are some of the challenges we are seeing, even as we go down the path of trying homeopathy as an alternative way of managing the kids.
Can I ask, please, to both of you, Zachuas, and to Martha. Inside of your countries, are there complementary or alternative medicine approaches which are based on, your own wisdom from the country, from your countries?
Let me go first. They are, of course, we have, in the last, since I came across this topic, I've been interested to really research what is happening. And I shared an example some time back that when I was speaking to Marianne, even us, we do have traditional medicine, herbs. We use herbs, we use different ways to manage conditions. I even gave her an example that my mother sent me recently a herb that was well dried up. It is for dental problems. So I just put it in my mouth. It's mixed with tea leaves. I just put it in my mouth for some time, and then my sensitivity goes away, or my toothache goes away, and I'm able to solve without resulting to go into the dental clinic to be treated. But then such medication to be approved is quite a lengthy process. It's quite a difficult process. So we do have people who are practicing complementary medicine, and they do get in some of the prescriptions or medicines from India, from Australia, from China even. But then when they come here, the process of bringing them in, getting them certified is very lengthy, very costly, and it has been made very complex. So it becomes a self-defeating kind of a process to get a medicine, for example, to come from India to work locally. So when we went through that process, we realized you really have to set up quite a number of things before you can set up, even though you can get some of the medicine from back of behind your house in form of herbs, but you can only use it for yourself. The moment you start to market it and probably have other people benefit from it, like this example I gave earlier, I feel my teeth are fine. That herb really helped me, but then I can't tell people that this is a medicine. If you go in the villages, people do it quietly, but the moment you want to make that process official, it becomes very, very complicated for you to make it official.
Okay, so we've got a number of significant problems. One of them is actually being allowed to prescribe. So that's the first problem. Second problem is actually having somebody who can assist you frontline workers, because you're both frontline workers in terms of, facing to the patients, to the children. And the need for somebody to act in a halfway position, it seems to be very, very important to what you're talking about. And then, there is the issue of running a clinic, and then the whole process of prescribing and treating and that type of thing. Meeta, do you have any thoughts? What are your thoughts around hearing this?
Yeah, the legal aspect has to be taken care of. And second thing is the procurement of medicines, because it's very difficult to send it from here. So they need to have their local pharmacy also, with a local doctor, local homeopath. They need to have a local pharmacy so that the medicines are there in there, are quite handy.
Okay, so the thing that's needed more than anything, I was just going to ask that question. It's the matter of actually setting up a pharmacy and doing the potentization actually inside of your countries, so that it is your own natural thing. That's going to have to be a huge step in the right direction, but there's still the legal framework issues that you're talking about. And Martha, seeing what you're working, how you're working, and with your patients, they're living with you and so on. I can see that there's not so much spare time. It's like you're very busy to manage the needs of these children. It's very, very significant what you're dealing with.
Yeah, and I do agree before matter comes in. I do agree there is a significant challenge, and one of the ways that we've settled on that probably can help us move a little bit more is we need to establish two systems. One is completely an awareness approach. We need to start from an awareness angle. Raise awareness to communities and to individuals that there are alternative ways to manage these particular cases away from conventional medicine. So, because if communities know there are these solutions, then they will push for them, and legally and otherwise, then there will be a need to review the existing parameters legally. But if there is no, because again, even with conventional medicine, which we go to the hospitals are not available, the doctors are not available, it's not cheap. So we are seeing a solution that is being, the solution that is being touted as a solution, not addressing the needs. So it's not like if I don't get an alternative treatment, I'll go to the hospital and then I get the conventional treatment. It's still lacking in many communities. In Africa and in Kenya to be specific. But then the alternative medicine as well has not really taken hold to be able to be a valid solution. And I think I see an opportunity there that it can start to grow very fast before conventional treatment has taken root, because we are not at a place where Europe is, for example, the big pharmaceutical companies. We have not reached a place where there are big players in the health industry. So this is, I feel, the right moment where we can strike and we can raise awareness in terms of alternative treatment. To that angle, we can go the charity way. We can create an association, which is something that we have started, Martha, Moses, and many others who are interested to join that association, to start to raise awareness in communities, to start to tell them this is how we are managing autistic challenges or these other challenges without using conventional medicine. So we create that awareness pool. But also on the second hand, we can now create the economic aspect of it, which is the mechanism. For example, how do you procure medicine that are needed in homeopathy? How do you distribute them logistically, moving from one point to another? How do you make sure that they make value, they generate something small to sustain the awareness side of it? So they need to go hand in hand, because you can establish the economic, the business side of it, get the medicine down here, but then if people don't have the message, or people don't believe that they actually are solutions, they will not go for it. So I feel there is still a need on both sides. People accepting that this is a way to manage this condition, and then on the other side, making the solutions or the prescriptions available. So those need to go hand in hand.
Yeah. Dr. Nihlani, sorry.
Yeah, I agree that first we need to work on the legal matters, and at the same time we need to create an awareness that, you know, most of the people, they don't know that alternative medicines and especially homeopathy can work to that level. So that awareness is to be created, so that they start asking, you know, only when you ask you start getting. So when they start asking for the alternative medicine, so it has to be a gradual movement. It has to be a gradual movement.
Yes, please, Martha. Yeah.
Maybe I would comment and say that in our 7-point plan, our strategic plan, one of the things that we do, our first thing is awareness campaign and the inclusive social protection for those that need the inclusivity. And then our second one is maximizing self-reliance through formal and informal skill training. We have the third one, which is advocacy. What we are doing now, like we are about to begin, we'll be advocating for that. If the homeopathy can be a solution, we have to be the people who take that responsibility of advocating, even in our own little ways. We have to begin from where we can. Then we have the fourth one, the capacity building for families preparedness. Among the things that the few things that I'm doing now, like we have to communicate with the parents and saying that I'm actually advocating for that. And we are slowly getting there for the families that we are willing to engage in the process, in the journey. So that is capacity building for families preparedness. Then we have, for our fifth one, because we are thinking in going the cottage industries, there are those children that we can be able to transform, to be able to do skills that can transform their lives, that they can use for self. Our motto is maximizing self-reliance. So yes, using the development of cottage industries out of the the formal and informal skills that we imparted in our second point. Then our sixth is as a development of market associations for the products that you're making with the children. And then we have the continuous monitoring of capacities and economic participation. So in the whole of that process, we have captured that. And I think the best thing is to look at it positively and say, we have to begin from somewhere. So if this is the beginning, even in our own small ways, we can integrate them in the programs and start from somewhere. Yeah.
So social inclusiveness is also an important point of awareness. You have to make them socially inclusive, and you have to make them socially, like they are in a space of giving and taking. So that is very important. The occupational therapy and the speech therapy, they need. Autistic children and these kind of people, they need this creative aspects also, creating a space where they are able to give their best. So it has to be again a social structure which helps them to grow.
I feel that within our plan, we have captured all that. It's something that is doable within our strategic plan. So we can only begin from somewhere. The journey begins with 1,000 steps beginning with one.
Yes, and you see with Martha already having what looks like a very basic plan, and she's able to reach a certain community where these children are coming from, and that is duplicated. And Moses has another one, and I work with 55 children homes, for example, different centers that work with children, and those centers can be activated to be awareness points where they can create awareness around themselves. Then you can see this can scale up to create the critical mass that we need in terms of making the message about alternative medicine to be a reality. I've been working with Christopher and Dennis to try and figure out. Dennis is about biotechnology, and Chris has very good connection in politics and the legal issues. So the first thing is trying to bring people on board who can really help us reach different stakeholders, reach government, try to pitch different ideas to them and see how that moves. Because we as Martha and the other homes influence on the grassroots, at the grassroots level, at community level, and make sure that parents and stakeholders at community level are getting the message and they are interested. We also need people who can push at the top level in terms of policy makers, in terms of Ministry of Health, for example, where policies are made. Just make sure that we get the proper balance. So when the right moment, then whatever we have worked on can become a one unified solution. Because the issue is we are not debating whether homeopathy works. We are debating whether homeopathy can be accepted in Kenya's context, for example, in African context, and it can be enhanced and made better. And policymakers can know that communities are desiring this as an alternative way of solving their problem. This will actually help with another problem that we came across as we were doing the research. The problem of documenting local solutions. There are so many hubs in Africa, and Kenya, for example, has 42 tribes, and each tribe uses different kind of hubs, different kind of trees or methods to deal with different issues, and all those needs to be documented. At the moment, there's very little documentation that is happening. There are herbs and different ways that my grandmother used to manage different conditions when we were young children. She's now dead and gone, and nobody knows what she used to do. You know, nobody knows how she used to do it. It was never documented. I can't read it anyway. So documentation is another place that is really a big challenge, because whenever we go to conventional medicine practitioners, they seem to be pushing this narrative that there is no evidence, you know, to support that this is medicine. But then also Africa does not invest heavily in research. You know, so if a particular tree has a medicinal value, there is nobody researching it, there's nobody documenting it. Very little is happening in that area, because there is a big push for people to market the medicine that is coming from abroad, and the big pharmaceutical companies that are establishing here to market their medicine. So we see those as very big challenges that needs to be addressed from a small point that Martha has alluded to.
Look, it's a huge issue, and you know, one of the things, of course, with homeopathy being such a scientific practice, you know, like it's based on you know, huge amounts of you know, evidence-based taking. Like there's an amazing amount of research and publication done in the field of homeopathy. So it's well researched and it's well documented. In the case of the application of homeopathic approaches, you know, within your communities and so on, then it is a matter of integrating that that evidence as it's actually being generated into, you know, the wider, you know, global repository of information. So, Dr. Nihlani, that fundamentally there's no shortage of information about the application of homeopathy worldwide, but the issue is actually the integration and the success rate, the evidence base that's coming out of the communities in Africa.
Basically, the awareness and acceptance of the communities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise it will create some legal aspects. So that is the first thing we have to work on.
Yeah. I see a parallel actually in some of the work that your colleagues are doing in India, where they're working with, you know, poor communities within India, and you know, having, you know, setting up treatment, you know, programs, and it's the same issue for them as well, is that they need to actually get acceptance within the communities, within the clinics, and they do the clinics in a very powerful, you know, fast way, and then, you know, based on the community experiencing these improvements, then there's more people coming to the clinics month after month after month. So you know, it's, Martha, as you say, like the journey that begins today. It's always the next step that we can take right now, and there's no question that there's a bright future with this.
Right. So it's basically, first thing is we have to create that awareness and we have to promote things. You know, like once the things, like in autism, most of the things which trouble the persons or the children going is the sensory integration. So when the communities are told about that, you know, that these patients basically they are violent or they are aggressive because of they are not integrate those senses. So if the community or even the parents, they don't understand why this person is behaving in such a way. And we as doctors, as physicians, we go beyond this why, you know, beyond the tantrums, beyond the aggression. And when we understand that there is some problem at the level of integration, they are not able to bear the bright light, or they are not able to bear the loud noises, that is what makes them aggressive. So once this awareness starts coming in the communities, they will be a bit more empathetic about these people. You know, like what makes them suffer? What is the trauma behind these children, their aggression? What is the trauma behind this behavior? So if we start, at least if we can start this awareness of alternative medicines, also awareness about the disease, that what that person is going through. instead of isolating. And as you said that these people are made to sit into a room and they are not even introduced to the guests around, because people don't want to know that they have a disabled child. So when you start working at least with the families who are suffering, who have children suffering from them, so they will not be ashamed of these children. They are not a curse, they are gifts. And also all these children, they have their own special gifts. So once you see them beyond the mask of that aggression or the mask of that, tantrums, you see a person who's very sensitive. You see a child who's very sensitive and scared of the world, and he's having his own unique gifts. So when we start giving these messages through posters or through small little movies, then, there will be a more awareness and acceptance first at the level of family. If the family doesn't accept, we can't expect a community to accept the child wholeheartedly. So the parents have to be, again, they have to be taught, they have to be made aware to how to treat their child. They have to embrace their child first, and they have to embrace the child with love and empathy. And that is how the message will start going out.
Yeah.
I am actually very happy that Dr. Meeta mentioned about the issue of diseases like conditions like autism not being a curse or something, because there are a lot of stereotypes here that come with children or people with disabilities like those ones. They are considered either the family did something wrong, or there is talk about maybe when their forefathers were living or whatever, they did something wrong, and now this curse is coming down to this particular child. And it's always very sad for me from a community angle, because the woman who is the mother usually seem to take the biggest burden or the biggest blame. In some cases, they get chased out of their marriage because they might have did something wrong, because in our family we don't have children who are disabled, so it means it is you who came with this particular curse. There's a lot of verified stereotypes that sometimes when you go into the communities, you really have to start to spend time explaining deeply how these conditions develop or how they come up, and what might lead to this condition, and remove the notion that it is a curse or someone did something wrong, or they might have offended someone or a higher being or something like this. Because then those are some of the masks that families wear, that communities wear, to just help them not to deal with that issue, to help them not to look for solutions for that particular issue. So when we are talking about awareness, we are talking about also very basic things like this is not a curse, and affirming families and communities that this is not a curse. It's a condition that can actually be managed, and we can deal with it. This way, it gives us an opportunity to present a solution that can really work. So when we are talking about a typical rural community, we really need to look at it from that point where there is a lot of misinformation, a lot of stereotypes, a lot of people making points that are not verified. Someone saying, for example, that family is cursed. That's why you see those children, because we have seen even on TVs here, one family having maybe 5 or 6 children who are autistic or who are having this or that mental problem. And the first thing that hits people's minds is they might have done something wrong. That's why that is happening to them. So such notions are some of the obstacles that we are likely to face, even as we think about how to create an effective awareness strategy to community.
Yeah. Maybe I would add on that and say that for Otugi Angels, we are trying to communicate. Our strategic plan says that we communicate through films. Like we take that action and then we teach communities, even not just by speaking, but as we release this film to more and more communities, they will we are hoping that they are going to embrace the issue of mental disability, issues of children, like appreciating children like the autistic children, children with cerebral palsy, and all that. And actually today we are honored because today is the day that you are going to watch our first cut in our first film that we did last year in December. And we are hoping that with, even as we begin small, we are going to reach as many people in the communities as possible for this awareness that they should embrace children with disabilities, all forms of disability. But we are also bringing out the issue of autism in a huge way, because when I'm living here, there are things that are working that are not captured in our policies in Kenya. And I am now seeing the government coming to me to learn how I have managed through all this. And I am, for the last like 2 months now, I'm realizing that the government wants to be informed by people who are on the ground that are experiencing this. I have never seen them for many years. I have been on for 7 years, and right now I'm seeing the government coming to approach me in various ways. I'm also seeing leaders from various parts of the country coming to learn here how they can implement such in their communities. So maybe I'm looking at it also as an opportunity where whatever is working for us, it's a time to speak it out so that it may be captured in our policies, so that even in future as we continue operating, we are operating under something that is already allowed, or it's already captured in the policies of this country, in the policies that we operate on. I'm looking at many things that work, like what Zach has said, the issue of love. Dr. Meeta has talked about love as a very powerful tool, but I'm looking at it like we have success stories in Otugi Angels, but one of the things that that has made us succeed is because of the issue of inclusivity. I am operating from my own home, so I included children with disabilities. I don't have a child with disability. My children are just the normal children. And here they are living inside a family where there's a father setup, there's a father figure, there's a mother figure, and the other brothers, some with diverse disabilities and others who are not, because my own children do not have any disabilities. So one of that approach is a complete approach, because they are feeling loved, they are appreciating that feeling, and which makes our life much easier. Because when we come to approaching the child and dealing with the child, they don't have that spirit of rejection. They are feeling love, they are feeling the warmth of the family, they are feeling the inclusivity. So when you're dealing with them, they are dealing in an environment that has a friendly approach. And it makes our life much easier in transforming these children more than any other project around, because of the issue of having only persons with disability alone, and with that and the stigma that is associated with it. We have also fought a lot of stigmatization. I also face a lot in communities before they came to appreciate that this is a real fact, and when they have seen the transformation that is taking place here, now they have embraced us. But before we reached there, we have really suffered, because you go to a place, you're treated last because you are a people that do not deserve. You know, that is the spirit that has been there. But slowly by slowly, I'm looking at churches embracing us. I'm looking at the government embracing us. I'm looking at communities, even the parents becoming positive about our children. So I'm feeling that the same little ways, our little ways are working out, and slowly we'll get there. I also want to take this opportunity that the government is looking at me as a role model, and they are learning from me, to allow them, to give them this information so that we see whether they can be able to work on it, to be included in the policy, so that even as we operate in future, we may be able to operate freely and feeling that we are captured. We are a forgotten lot in Kenya. I will not be ashamed to say that, because a lot of things you try to, even in my rescue cases, it's now they are using me to now embrace the issue of rescuing children with disabilities. But if you look at it, there are a lot of gaps. In the law, in the Kenyan law, a person with a mental disability who is beyond 18 is still considered a minor. But when you come to the departments that work with these people, like the Children's Department, the Ministry of Social Services, they disregard that. They have not captured that. So if you go there for services, they're like, you're disregarded because they don't know how to deal with you. But right now, because now they have started coming to me to learn, I'm also voicing out some of the problems that you're facing in implementation of these services. And we are hoping that maybe in future, even if it's many years, we will still appreciate that one day our little services imparted on the larger community, the whole country. So I believe some of those approaches, like you're talking about homeopathy, I am sure it is going to impact, because I'm sure it is tested somewhere and it is working. If it is something that is transforming a life, you would rather use what is transforming so that 3 lives or 4 lives are transformed, instead of just working and working and working with no transformation. Because at the end of the day, what you need is the results. And if this is going to be of help, I believe in the very, very little ways, we can be able to begin from somewhere, and then slowly by slowly try to advocate for that. And slowly, I believe we are going to get somewhere. Because if that is the solution, then if it needs to be embraced. But it will not be embraced if we have not voiced it up. So in our little ways, I believe that we'll get somewhere, but we'll start small, just like we started Otugi Angels. But today we are seeing Otugi Angels becoming a help of people we don't even know. Slowly by slowly, they are embracing the little things that we use, and they have seen our children transform. Now they want to know, what is this that you are doing for this transformation to take place? If homeopathy is going to be one of it, I would really appreciate, because I believe in the little things that you'll do, a whole country can be allowed to transform because of that beginning of the step. But if you don't begin, it will never be an answer. Yeah.
Yes. So I really like what Mother has explained. Yes, I really like what Mother has explained, that what she's bringing out is actually the issue. The issue is we need allies, and we need people who can share evidence. So even if we start to set up an association locally, even if we start to set up local mechanisms, we also need evidence from that side. We need things that have worked to show to local administrations, local officers, people in charge, to tell them that this is what is working in this particular place, this is the challenge that they have seen, and this is how they are solving it, and this is how we are incorporating it, this is how we are making it to apply to a typical Kenyan situation or to a typical African situation. This is our own solution that we have made locally, but we have also looked at the other solution that these people have made. For example, Dr. Beta has worked on in India, and we have seen actually they are alike, and what we are using here and what they are using are actually giving us results. So we are at a point where even the officials themselves don't have adequate information. Like Martha has said, there is a gap in the law in many instances. In many incidences, for example, if she goes to the hospital, she was telling me an example the other day. They went with a child who is disabled, and they put a plaster on the leg, on the hand, and the child was always trying to remove it. The hand was broken, so they wanted to fix it with a hand plaster. And the child found it to be very inconveniencing, and mother actually wanted them to ask them to seal the other hand, put another plaster on this hand so that he doesn't have to use it to remove this one before the hand heals. But the doctor said this is not allowed, He didn't even put into consideration that this child is disabled, and the plaster he put on this hand is actually causing more mental problems, more well-being of the child, because then he's wondering what is this. So he keeps on plucking it and moving it, in that process hurting himself even more. So such small observations can really help to change things. It might be a very small thing, but if that is allowed, that a child with a disability can be allowed to cover this other hand so that they don't use it to harm themselves even more when they are being treated elsewhere on the body, that would be the change that we are looking at. So we are, as I've said, we are looking for allies, and I'm very happy that working together with Mary. We have been able to meet Neil. We have been able to meet Dr. Meta. We already had a conversation with Dr. Isaac from Australia as well. So we are having a lot of people who are interested in bringing this conversation and sharing the evidences. Some of the things that Dr. Isaac mentioned, for example, has written in his books are very, very powerful, and we have been quoting some of those as we talk to people locally and help them raise awareness. So there is a lot there that we can only do the way Martha has said, step by step, slowly by slowly, and then have this unified effort supported by friends like yourself. So this is what we really are looking at.
Yeah. And I want to say something which Jacques has just remarked, that these diseases, these mental diseases are seen as curses. Right? So this is a one stigma which we have to start working on by giving these, 20 of most successful people in the world have been suffering from autism. So autism is also a gift. These people with autism, they have their own unique gifts. So this point also can be, just talked and conveyed through to the parents. We can just make small videos of these persons sharing their own disabilities, and they are even Bill Gates is suffering from this autism. Woody Allen also suffered from autism, right? So he has his own neurotic shades.
Yeah.
So we can talk about these persons to those people, to the parents of autistic children who are consider them as curse. It is only when they accept and they start seeing them as blessings and they start seeing the unique gifts, we can be able to contribute to the society more. Right. And second point where Jack was mentioned that homeopathy is only seen in the rich strata. That is very ironical, because homeopathy is the cheapest medicine. We have just 5 cents of homeopathic remedy. We get 1 gram and we can treat at least 20 patients out of it, because the doses given are very minimal. The doctrine of minimalization is also there in homeopathy, and the medicines are very, very, very cheap. So this is the irony, that it being cheap, it is used in the upper strata. It should have been opposite. Right? So we have to deal with all these things, and we have to start giving these messages.
Yes, and you see, why is it used? Why is it in Kenya? It's used by among the rich. Is because the rich have an opportunity to travel to India and see what options of treatments are there. They have an opportunity to be exposed to different ways of managing conditions, unlike the poor, who the only thing they need is a chemist, or is a local health center that is developed by local government, which in many cases doesn't need awareness and the ability that the rich know that these alternatives do exist. And then the regulation being so tough. So, for example, what you have alluded to, that for example, a few grams can manage 20 people. To get that gram, maybe a kilo of that to come to Kenya, you will find by the time it is leaving, Dr. Meta, is probably maybe $1. By the time it reaches Kenya and it reaches to Martha and the kids, it has gone to the upward of $30. The upward of $40, because of the regulations, because of the level of checking. Let me give you actually a typical process of registering for one type of a medicine, alternative medicine. I first have to register myself as a wholesaler. First, register as a company. Once I've registered as a company, register myself as a wholesaler. Then once I've registered as a wholesaler, I need to get a license from the Kenya Poisons and whatever board, which is in charge of regularizing all the medicine in Kenya. And this board, what is very interesting is all of it is made up of doctors who are conventional doctors, and they work in conventional hospitals. They use conventional medicine, so they're also tasked with the responsibility of approving alternative medicine. So that in itself is a conflict of interest from that point. So they've made it, for me to get that license, it's even very tough. And then once I get the license, assuming I reach there, I have now to submit the samples of all the medicine or all the complementary solutions that I'm bringing in. I have to present a sample. And this sample, some of them, if they're potent, I have to present 50 of them or 60 of them or even 100 of them to be tested by a certified government laboratory. And to test one of them goes to upward of $500 US. So to test it and to get it done, the whole process is likely to take me 1 year before I get it to market to start to use. So that process alone tells you it's not, while it is cheaply available or very affordable in a place like India where Dr. Meeta is, by the time it comes to the Kenyan market and I go through the whole process, it will have really gone up and only the rich person can afford it. So it's no longer for the poor. So that's another thing that we really have to deal with and to make sure that even if it comes locally, the prices are as affordable as they can be so that the person we are targeting can actually be able to get it. Otherwise, I will bring it and then I have to open a store in a very expensive estate because that's where those people can be able to buy that medicine and can make sense. So those are some of the flips that we are looking at in terms of if we want to cover this and make available some of the alternatives that we are proposing, we have to work carefully about it. We have to be deliberate in designing some of the proposals, and we really need a lot of support from your side in terms of people who understand the necessity of this. And probably in the beginning it might be a little bit costly, but as they continue to work in the communities and the people start to see the transformation, then we can easily lobby and say, hey, this is what we have done. Because I understand when we were talking to Dr. Isaac, there was an option of us documenting the results, sharing these results with him, even Dr. Meeta here sharing the results with you, and then making sense of that information, publishing it, and making it available so that we can share with the Kenyan authorities, Kenyan government, show them that this is evidence, this is what has been done, and this is what is working, and this is how it is working. Then we can see that start to wear out some of the rigidity that is there in the system currently.
Well, look, everybody's raising some, very interesting points there. I can put my hand up myself and say that I'm in the autistic spectrum as well, and it is a blessing. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Dr. Nihlani, it is a blessing, and there is a bright future for people who are in the spectrum. Without a doubt, there is a bright future. The questions that we started off the conversation around. With creating a pharmacy so that we can actually manufacture on the ground, for example, in Kenya, would make a tremendous difference to the things that you're talking about there. So you're not dealing with an import process. You would actually be doing the manufacturing of all of these remedies, all of these prescriptions that would be being made would all be done locally. Which would make a tremendous difference. That would make a massive difference to many of the barriers that you're talking about there. It's still, you would need to have the specific remedies, approved. You're still going to have to go through an approval process, but at least you wouldn't have that, the layers and layers and layers of profit taking, that you're talking about there, Zachuas. So that can be avoided. And, we're talking about, the steps, the practical steps on this journey that we can take. And, this is definitely an angle which can be followed up.
Yes, actually, you've mentioned a good point. In the research we were doing, we realized getting something approved that is local, that is made local, is relatively cheaper than something that is entirely made abroad, because one of the conditions they have set is, for example, if you're making this thing in Australia, they have to come and check, the authorities in Kenya have to come and check your facility in Australia and give a certificate that it is qualified to manufacture that. That's like a Bureau of Standards. So they have to come and check.
Medicines from outside. Instead of manufacturing,
Yes?
will be a big thing. Just getting the medicines from outside.
Yes. So typically, if it is locally made and the people who are involved in Kenya are local, that significantly reduces the price by almost 50%, reduces all the necessary logistics by almost 50%. So we have really worked on that bit quite a little bit in detail with Dr. Isaac on that, and we'll make a report available once he's back and see how we can progress with that in to that direction, because then having those things available locally will really solve the logistics issue that mother needs to access some of these things on a very local level. They need to be available when she needs them. Everybody else needs to have these things available when they need them. So I do agree with you, Neil, that those are some of the really practical solutions that we need to look at.
I'm very aware that we're running long on time here. I feel as though we probably can come and revisit this and work about, work through next steps, as a working group. But I wonder if you each have something that you'd like to just say, to our listeners, to our viewers, in closing. And, I'd like to start by just saying how wonderful it is to actually hear, this cooperative, collaborative approach that is being, ventured here, including, a doctor from Australia and, a doctor from India and, both of you working there in Kenya with, tremendous success with the work that you're doing. To me, this is the brightest shining example of, a way forward. Is to cooperate and collaborate and to become coherent in our efforts. So, I'm going to lead off with our closing comments by just, congratulating, the three of you on what you're doing and your team. So, thank you.